composite this this clip. So this is a straightforward green screen. This is a good example of what to use, because the green screen it's good, but it's not perfect. I mean, it's kind of hard to see with the naked eye, but you have different brightnesses and darknesses of green there. You have some pegs on the right hand side, and you have some folds there, so that might present certain challenges, and we will need to do something about this side as well, which I'll show you in a moment, getting rid of that side of the screen that doesn't have green screen on it. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll use the same type of approach as the last time. Now, just to answer the question, how do you get the color solid? The color solid is available with all of Final Cut Pro's internally generated graphics in this drop down menu here, the little A on the film frame. So the last one I did was a color solid, so it shows up at the top, but if you want to go into it through the menu, you go matte and color solid, and it gives you that garish blue. But you can go into the controls and change the color. So I'm going to give it a white value, so I'll just click on one of these white boxes, click OK, and drag that down there onto the timeline. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is get my clip loaded up again and bring that down. Okay, now, so the idea here, I'll switch off the wireframe. The idea here is that I want to composite this in such a way that the figure is left on front of this clean white kind of generic limbo kind of screen. Now, the filter that's used for keying in Final Cut Pro, the most effective one, is the Primat RT filter, and that is in under Key, Primat RT, and you'll see that it does a kind of a botched job out of the box. So I'm going to be going back in and changing all of these. So I'll load that up and click on the filters, and there's a couple of properties here that I'm going to play with. Now, first of all, the output type it's showing me is processed foreground. So this is actually showing me the result of the composite or the keying. If I just put in foreground, it will give me the original clip. Now, what I want to do here is to either use these droppers or color samplers or an auto sample on red, green and blue to get a starting point for my color key. So it's basically saying, right, well, what color do you want to key? Because it's not always green, and it's not always a screen behind someone that you want to key out. So I'm going to go for green. Go back to processed foreground. That was actually what was selected. So I go back in to foreground, use my color dropper. Okay, worse again. Okay, right, so what I'll do is I will pull up, let's see now, I'll try that again. Okay, right, I'll work with what I have here. Right, so my processed foreground image shows me the final result, but what I want to do here is I want to pull up my matte image, and what my matte image shows me is, you guessed it, the matte image that Final Cut Pro is creating on the fly to be used as a control image to dictate what's transparent and what's opaque. So it's looking for black values and white values and grey values, but in this case usually what you're looking for is a good thick white against black with edges that are kind of fairly well defined but not necessarily blocky or hard edged. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to play with the matte image now, and you'll do that through the noise removal matte density controls. So it's kind of a toggling between the matte density, and you'll see that you can play with that density figure. You can click left and click right to to get better, more fine control over the density and the noise removal, then will pull down any white flecks that you might have in the black area. So if I go from matte back out to processed foreground, you'll see that it does a pretty okay job here. Now it is looking a little bit purplish, which is fine for the moment. There's a few things we can do here. Now the purple comes from the fact that what Final Cut Pro does to get a cleaner separation between the figure and the ground is it applies kind of like the opposite color to green, so that the edges are more easily defined against that green background. And you'll see that if you adjust that, it'll take down that a small bit, but if you go too far, it'll start to disintegrate the edges. So spill suppression can be used just to take that down a small bit, but what you should probably get used to doing is using what you already know about color correction and applying something like a color corrector 3-way onto that clip to do much more controlled changes on the colors. So if, for example, I wanted to pull that the skin tones a little bit further away from that purple, I could do it here. I could pull them a little bit more towards the kind of the yellow, and I can kind of also control the brightness and contrast and saturation and things like that as well. Okay, so there's plenty you can do. Even if you wanted to, knock it back and turn it into a high contrast image, you could do that here against that, or using the color corrector 3-way. I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to warm it up a little bit. In there. Okay, go back out to my filters. I can see that the Primatte RT is being applied first, then the color correction is being applied to the Primatte, to the result of the Primatte RT. So it's not actually doing a correction on the green screen, which would be a disaster, because then it will change the green screen color and then my key won't work anymore. Okay, so that's, again, looking at the order that filters are applied is very important. At this stage I can pop that onto image and wireframe, and because I have it set, or because I have my key done, I could basically put her anywhere at any size and use her in the lower corner if it's some sort of a graphic, for example, that I wanted to work on. Now I still have this messy part here. Now what that's going to allow me to do is to either use the motion tab. Now in this case the motion tab would provide enough control through the crop property to get rid of that. Now sometimes you want a little bit more control over that masking or eliminating unwanted elements from the shot. So you can use what's called a garbage matte to do much more controlled work in that regard. So I'll go back to my my effects, and you have these 4 and 8 point garbage mattes. I'll go with the 8 point for a minute. Just load that up. You can see all the different points there, and that is a filter, so I can adjust where point 3 comes into, and you'll see that it pulls point 3 in, and point 4, pull that in, and you'll see that whatever is outside of these green dots is invisible, and whatever is inside is visible. So I could even go a lot more closer with point 3, for example, and I could effectively kind of mask her out in a more detailed way. So if I wanted to do that, that's the way that I would go about doing it. Point 5, pull that in there. Okay, so that's a handy way of doing it. Now all of these points are keyframed, so the nature of video moving, she could potentially walk out across 3 and 4, in which case you would need to get 3 and 4 and move them with her using the keyframe and the point parameters there across time. And that is what would be referred to as a very rudimentary rotoscope, where you're following something in terms of its live action movement on screen and following it with a mask or a graphic of some sort. So that's the Primat RT, and it's most often used in conjunction with the color correction filters and some sort of a garbage matte filter. Now what that also means, the garbage matte also tells us that we don't need to have a green screen that covers the entire shot. We just need to have a green screen that covers the figure in the foreground. So you could potentially have a collapsible green screen that just covers her, and then key her against it, and then all the rubbish that you find outside of the green screen can be gotten rid of using those 8-point garbage mats.